Greetings, everyone. My name is Reverend Dr. Carter, and welcome to the Progressive Christians Podcast. We like to say that we are the love your neighbor kind of Christians and not the storm the Capitol kind. So in today's episode, we're going to talk a little bit about why we have changed the title of this podcast and kind of what's in the future in the next few weeks for all of you. And to those of you who are new listeners, welcome. We're going to get into the nomination of Vice President Kamala Harris. There is some, there's just a lot to say right there. I won't go into too much detail right now. We're going to talk about, for those of you who aren't aware, Kirk Franklin had a really interesting interview on Cam Newton's Freaky Friday podcast. And we're going to just spend a few minutes talking about some of the things you brought up with respect to some things that are weaponized in Western Christianity. And then we're going to talk about the Olympics as a way of wrapping things up. So I guess let's begin by welcoming everybody back after probably a 2-month hiatus?
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, spent a lot of time traveling and writing. Unfortunately, got the COVID for about a week, and that was absolutely terrible. But in hindsight, so obviously predictable given like what I was doing, and I was visiting farmers and farms in rural Louisiana, Alabama, and Georgia. So in hindsight, probably not surprised I got COVID. I just wasn't thinking of it in the moment because it's 100 degrees. And I didn't really think about putting on a mask. I just thought about trying to keep the sweat out of my face, of which I was sweating quite a bit.
Yeah, 100 degrees with a mask sounds terrible. It's a little warm on the subway sometimes, and I put the mask on. I'm just like, this is a lot.
Yeah, it totally made me realize how asking people to mask down south during peak pandemic, like I was like, oh wow, yeah, this would be a whole nother thing. I just wouldn't want to see anybody. I'd be like, I'm good. Like I don't want to put a mask on.
I'm staying
It's too
home.
hot. I just become an introvert. I'm good. But yeah, so that was what I was doing for those couple of months, and gave us some time to kind of reflect and talk about some things we want to do with this podcast, and say a little bit more about why we wanted to pivot. So to that end, you will notice that we've changed the name of this podcast from the Loft Conversations to the Progressive Christians Podcast. We've done that mostly because we want to be able to expand the range of topics we were discussing. And we also want to talk about it from a progressive Christian perspective, because quite honestly, when you look at the podcasts that deal with Christianity specifically, or religion in general, on Spotify or iTunes or any place else, they're just mostly conservative. And even the ways they talk about within those conservative podcasts, or even the moderate ones, the way they talk about progressive Christianity is so narrow. They have a very particular idea of what it is, and they project that idea onto all progressive Christianity, right?
Yeah, I was like, I don't listen to them, so I'm curious.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I guess probably the best, to be general, and this is a generalization. Obviously, I can't speak for all the podcasts, but I could say I listen to a little bit of a lot of podcasts, because I can't listen to the whole. I couldn't do it. I can't do it. Most of them have the belief that we aren't biblically sound, that we don't understand, or that we're not taking the law, like the actual teachings of Jesus, seriously, and actually trying to go according to what the Bible says. So kind of teeing it back to the Bible, that we are basically trying to create a Jesus that welcomes all people for the sake of being popular, and not really trying to help people become better people. That's more about trying to create something that's palatable to the masses. And I think, to be fair, there probably are some. I would be lying if I said that all progressive Christianity has good theology. Some of it's very shallow. Some of it's very, very shallow. Similarly, I would say that there are some conservative Christianity that has some decent theology. I have a friend of mine that's conservative Catholic, who's a professor at Fordham, and he argues from his conservative positions that like Christians should be vegan. He argues from his conservative perspectives about the importance of having paid family leave, and basically really taking care of families, and supporting poor people. I mean, he actually just makes similar arguments that we make, but he makes it from a conservative perspective, right? Which shows me like maybe some of the challenge isn't necessarily progressive versus conservative, but it really is about doing the things that Jesus said. Rather
Imagine
than
that.
imagine that. And they have different approaches to getting there. But if you get there, that's the primary point. So yeah, their perspective on what we do is that we basically are not Christian.
Wow. Well, it's so wild is that like making something palatable to the masses would make you think that progressive churches are like the largest in the country, just stadium sized churches. But my experience of them has been quite opposite.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think that's a really good point about how it almost feels like they believe our churches are these super large churches,
yeah.
or even, I mean, again, it's all this stuff out of fear. It's all
Hmm.
rooted in
Hmm.
fear. It's this idea that if I don't believe or do or say these certain kinds of things, I'm going to be punished, rather than thinking about how one ought to live. And when you do things out of fear, you ultimately end up you make choices that actually aren't reflective of who you actually are, or what you
Hmm.
even want to believe. But anywho, that's what these podcasts be saying about us. I try to be as objective as I can be. I actually feel like I'm pretty objective, actually, talking about conservative theology and Christianity, because that's my job.
Yeah. You have a
So
PhD. Like you've done the critical analysis
I mean, I
and
keep up
continue
with
to
it.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I haven't watched Fox News since the switch. I've read stuff. I could tolerate watching it a little bit, but now it's like, I can't. It's too,
Can't stomach it.
yeah. It's just, it's just a bit too racist. Whereas like on the reading, it's like more dog whistle, which I can tolerate dog whistle. I'm like, that's just, welcome to America, right? Uh,
Well, that
so
it's what a segue.
what a segue to talking about Vice President Harris and her
Woo,
nomination.
child.
Absolutely.
A piece of news that came in bright and early on a Sunday morning. Wesley, were you there that day?
Yeah, I was. We were sitting next to each other, and it was really hard to focus when
It was
the
so
world
hard
around
to
you was
focus.
shifting.
Oh wow, I forgot. Yeah, so like I don't think I was in, because I went to visit a church as while I was traveling. I don't think I was in church that Sunday.
You
We
weren't.
were.
I think
Well, I
it was
mean,
your
like,
last
I don't think I was
Sunday.
I don't think I was in any of these other churches I was visiting. I think I was actually like probably home. So yeah, so did y'all talk about it like after worship or
No.
during?
I mean,
Okay,
Yes.
after for sure. But
yeah,
like in the
We're
moment
not
when it's
that
coming
bad.
through,
Yeah.
it was
We're just
like,
sitting next to each other, like
and
elbowing
you
each
could
other.
see it across the community, like,
yeah.
people were on their phone because,
I would
It's
have,
big
if I was
news.
preaching, I would have just switched topics. I ain't even gonna lie. I just been like, all right, looks like we pivot in the middle of a sermon,
Well,
because
but we didn't know at the time that it was Kamala. We just knew that
was
oh, it
stepping
dropped
down.
he
out.
dropped out.
Mhm.
And then like a few
So
minutes later, he sent the thing saying, I want
it was
to,
like
yeah.
a couple of hours later,
Yeah.
I think.
It wasn't,
No,
was
it
it that
was
close together?
it was that close. Yeah. See, this is the thing with like, so like I was telling Wesley, like, I have been consuming political podcasts because I was afraid Biden wasn't going to quit. And
Mm.
so right after he said I'm dropping out, and then it was like 5 minutes later he had another thing that he published that says I'm going to support Kamala. So according to Ezra Klein and a few other podcasts I listened to, essentially what he did was he called, it was like, basically he told Kamala and a few other people in his circle 5 minutes, or just basically right when they were going to publish the thing on Twitter. Like he didn't give them a heads up or anything like that. He just like, this is what's happening, which is pretty remarkable. I think that he was willing to make that shift. I do think it's hard for people to give up that much power. And I know people want to say he's doing the right thing. I think that's hard. I guess beyond that, I think it speaks to Kamala's ability to be so organized, like to counter all these narratives and caricatures they have of her as this unqualified, don't know if she's black woman, don't know she,
Mhm.
like just
Mhm.
how quickly she was able to galvanize support around all what we might want to say are super delegates. I thought she was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, my first instinct was it's not that I didn't want it to be her. I knew that it was going to be very unkind to black women. And so when my dread of her running was in anticipation of what we've heard and seen over the last month, of the things that people
Mhm.
have been saying about her and about black women generally. And that is what I was least excited for. That was my initial reaction was anxiety and like, no, 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 I don't.
Totally. No, that makes
But
sense.
if anyone can handle it, we're the ones.
That's literally what I was gonna say. Like I was like, and yet,
If
and yet,
anyone can take it,
anyone can. I mean, I was reading about the Zoom call they had that was organized by these black
Mhm.
women.
Mhm.
A little bit after to get support around
that
her.
night. It
Yeah,
was that night.
and like everything I'm reading, and people are saying it was like, I mean, she's in a sorority, right? So
She's an AKA.
AKA
and it's like
Divine Nine.
they basically were saying it was like church, like it was a very spiritual kind of gathering, which isn't again surprising when you think about the nature of community, the nature of
Mhm.
religion within black spaces, and the ways in which black women especially have continued to pray each other up and support each other in these extremely difficult times, and in the ways
Mhm.
in which in this country especially, black women sit at the intersection of racism and patriarchy, and so they are the canary in the coal mine, if you will, right? And so,
And yet no one listens.
well, I mean, I think that some people listen. I don't say no one. I think that's a little bit
I
extreme.
mean,
You know,
uh, but is it does a critical mass listen?
I think a critical mass of black people listen to black women.
That's not.
I, I think so,
I don't disagree, but
but that's not that many people. That's all I'm saying.
that's what I'm saying. A critical
Population-wise.
mass. A critical mass. You're like, of this.
That's what I said.
No, that's not enough people.
I think we're talking about America too, right? Now, obviously, we're talking about black women across the diaspora. But yeah, I don't know. Wesley, did you have any, like, how did you feel after it was announced?
I mean, I think I felt a lot of relief of having Joe Biden finally step down. And I acknowledge the arguments that Ezra Klein and other people have made about an open convention or brokered convention. At the same time, I was like, I like Kamala, and I voted for her, or I was supportive of her in the primary, and when she was running here for Senate in California. And I honestly was like excited for the prospect of a black woman president. I was like, this is incredible. Here's this person who's been serving as vice president, and we'll see if she's able to galvanize people in this immediate section, or whether someone's going to step up and decide to challenge as part of any process. But I think she did the work and called people and got people around her, and then just to see the outpouring immediately from like specific groups that black women joining together, but then also all the fundraising that happened in the first 24 hours. Like for me, it was people are showing up with their money, people are showing up with their time, and that was very encouraging. So I was just like, yes, if someone else chooses challenge, great. They will have to do the same thing. But so far, she is killing it.
She's crushing it.
Yeah, no, there's so much energy and enthusiasm. I mean, it feels like when Obama was running in 2007. Like that's the only thing I can relate it to, and it's partly because I think you have a candidate running on hope, which we haven't had in a long time, and I think people are tired of like doom and gloom politics. And as Julia
Over
said,
it.
that doesn't necessarily mean that she can win, in part because she could win 53% of the vote and not win because the way
Right.
our country is structured, right? So I have no doubt she's going to win the popular vote. Like I don't doubt that at all, but that doesn't mean anything
but
in our
that's
country.
Yeah.
So for me, I think thinking about this from a religious perspective, I liked Joe Biden is, broadly speaking, a pretty progressive, theologically progressive person, even if he's politically moderate, right? Like he does actually present and I mean, he talks about, again, it's like Pope Francis, right? Like Pope Francis has some very theologically progressive positions and some conservative ones, and I feel like he's in that kind of same category. I don't know too much about Kamala's religious background. She comes across, probably because again she's in black culture, she went to HBCUs, so
Yeah.
she comes across as someone who's clearly
familiar with the black
church, spiritual and that
Right.
stuff, but I don't know much about it. I'm looking forward to learning more about it, and I assume she's going to be engaging black church spaces because that's something you got to.
She gonna win.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
you gonna win Georgia? Good
Man.
luck.
100%. How you gonna
Mhm,
win Georgia? And so I'm actually really excited to learn more about how her faith informs her belief, because this is where I think Obama did so well, because Obama went to church in Chicago with Jeremiah Wright as his pastor. And you can, if you listen to Jeremiah Wright's sermons and you listen to Barack Obama, you're like, oh, okay. Like you see, like he picked up this kind of
Yeah.
that cadence and that kind of staccato in his voice. And so I'm really interested to see what Kamala ends up doing, or how she ends up engaging or talking about her religion and spirituality. Because I do think that matters to like people in the Midwest.
I just think it matters
It
generally,
just
but
matters.
also
It does.
I'm religious. So like of course I think it does. So
Yeah.
maybe it only matters to me. I will say that the following week, Reverend Dr. Kyle Brooks was with us.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last Sunday you were gone, and he brought up the point, and I can't stop thinking about it. He was like, she raised what, $230 million and like 70 something crazy, and he was like, so the money's there.
Mm.
So the money exists,
Yeah.
and we all have it, and we are all willing to give it, but we don't give it to each other, and we don't give it to the actual causes. We give it to people that we hope will fix the problem instead of investing directly in the problem. And I do like,
Yeah. I mean, when I speak to my friends from other countries, particularly Europe, because there's only people I've talked to about politics in this way, talk about the money we spend in politics here. It's insane. It's just
Mhm.
it's not legal in other countries. Like you
Mhm.
can't, there's caps. And
Yep.
we used to have this thing called campaign finance reform. And Obama was all for it until Obama actually like needed it. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so this is where you have these kind of moral compromises, to be fair. You know, so yeah, I don't think that's ever going to happen because of PACs and super PACs, and we conflate money with speech because of the Supreme
Citizens
Court.
United.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean
well,
that's
and
not
it is
changing.
it's just so indicative of our culture, right? Like
100%.
money is the most important thing. What do I say? Capitalism is their religion and money is their God. I know
That's
you
what you.
disagree,
I,
but
I think
but
it's a good saying. I think it's a very good saying. I don't.
he's like, I don't think it's true,
I mean,
but I think it's got to.
I think
You
it's
do say that.
truthy. I think it's truthy. I think it's truthy. I think it's definitely truthy. I want to spend a moment too talking about her pick or VP pick of Tim Walz, and I know there's a lot of, and I just want to just say something just briefly about him because I knew about him because of George Floyd and all that stuff, and
I knew about him because he's my neighbor.
yeah,
Well,
exactly. I think that's other thing too. We're from the Midwest, and
I'm
so
from
people
Wisconsin,
know
and
about Tim Walz. But what I appreciated about him, as I continue to read more about his story, was the fact that he was a teacher. I think that matters because I think teachers can explain complex problems in simplified terms, in a way that people understand it. He doesn't say it's simple to fix, which I think is what fascists do. He says he gives you the complex problem, but talks about it in a way that you can understand it. But the story and listening to the students that I shouldn't say listening to, reading from the things that students have written that were his students and the students who were in that first couple of years when he was the faculty representation for the queer group on campus.
Mhm.
That's amazing. Like the
Yeah.
fact that you had a football coach be like, I want to sponsor this group. I want to be their teacher liaison, so to speak,
Yeah.
because it's going to do more to break down the barriers that these students are going to encounter because of their sexuality.
Yeah.
That just speaks. I mean, he had nothing to gain from doing that as a teacher and only
yes,
everything to lose. That speaks so much of his character. I literally was like, this is
Mhm.
amazing.
Mhm.
and of his understanding of masculinity
100%.
and like the
Mhm.
power of masculine energy,
Mhm.
understanding that like as the straight like conservative appearing white cisgendered football coach, he understood his power and his
Yeah.
privilege. And that to me is what an ally is not just being like, me too, hashtag I agree. It's like
But that he chose to use it.
he chose to use it in a way that he knew would be impactful.
Yeah.
Right.
On behalf
It's
of
like,
people who I think it was
who
like in
need
the
it.
late 90s in
Yes.
in Minnesota. Like that's when I lived in Iowa, people would call Minnesota the California of the Midwest. I don't know if that's true. I like it. But even in like I can't imagine that the whole of Minnesota is a progressive bastion. So in the 90s, it would have been a very brave thing for him to step into this space and say, I'm going to be the faculty advisor for the GSA, and support
I
these queer students.
I think that that's what a lot of women, especially it's like we talk a lot about toxic masculinity, and we don't spend a lot of time talking about positive masculinity and the ways that that energy can show up and be healthy and
Yeah.
healing. And like, I think that he wears it so easily. And usually, you know, like, we're used to seeing coastal elites, you know, Barack Obama has a ton of positive masculinity, but people don't talk about it in the same way because they're like, oh, he's an intellectual. Oh, he wears tan suits. Like, people don't take him seriously as they're going to take Tim in his cargo shorts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, dude cannot dress, man. I'm like, I mean,
That's
I'm like,
okay.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
We need all kinds of people in the White House.
Clearly were not listening to the GSA's fashion advice, because I know for sure you would be dressing better than that. Because I was like, wow, that's not good. But no, I agree. I think, you know, I mean, the fact that he was in the military too, I think speaks to some of the privilege that, you know, he carries around and the ability to talk about these things. And I agree, Julia. I've never even heard of I mean, when you just said people don't talk about positive masculinity, I was like, wow, I haven't even thought about it from that perspective. Even as much as I think I try to model what it means to be a good cisgendered man, right? You know, and having the particular kind of balance and awareness of how to leverage masculinity in ways that actually are liberatory and anti-oppressive for people who are in marginalized positions.
One of our very good friends, I've learned this from him because he's good at it, because he was a linebacker for Division I. He's a giant Black man, and he's the one that, like, if he's in a room with a bunch of men and they say things, he's the one that'll be like, oh, and they're not going to challenge him.
I know you're talking about, and I wouldn't.
I know you know what I'm talking about.
None
of us would.
Yeah, I'm like, nah, that's not smart. That's not smart. I think not if you like breathing. So I would say.
And he uses that. He uses that, and more men should.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree.
And they should be more aggressive about it, because there was I saw this guy, this queer man who was like leaving a march a few months ago, and he was talking about how anytime I go into the streets to protest, everyone there who's organized it, it's all women. It's women, 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 women. Women are organizing it. Women are on the front lines. And he was like, but you know what men are out there? It's not the good guys. It's the bad guys. It's the KKK and the Nazis. Those men, they go out and then they meet our women, and they feel like they can say whatever they want and do whatever they want because it's a bunch of women. And he was like, we need more men out here. And I look at the protests in the UK of the last couple of weeks, and what stopped it is the men were in the streets. The good men. There are more of us than there are of them. And not enough of us, those men. Not enough good guys, not enough positive men will challenge the toxic ones. From what I observe, but what do I know?
No, I mean, I think that's fair. And I also think that's a great way for us to segue into the next topic we're going to talk about, which was about Kirk Franklin, his interview on Cam Newton's podcast. On this podcast, I know we're talking about masculinity and all these other kinds of things, Julia. What Kirk Franklin, for those of you who don't know, he's for the handful of you who don't know, he's just probably the most well-known contemporary gospel singer right now. Like, he bridges popular culture, I think, in pretty profound ways, definitely in the Black community.
He was the first one to do it.
Yeah.
He was the first one to kind of bridge secular music, like hip hop and R&B, with gospel music, and I think get it on the radio.
That's a good way to put it, like, because that's more of a modern time. So within, like, so we're thinking about a modern gospel perspective, he would be the first to be able to kind of make that bridge. He, in this podcast interview, which we'll have the link in the show notes, he states that there are 3 things that have been weaponized in Western Christianity, which I thought was interesting because he said Western Christianity, but that's my nerdiness point.
I clocked that too.
I was like, that's interesting. But
these are the words of a progressive Black Christian.
I know. I was like, all right, he's been doing some reading. I was like, he's been reading some theology. Okay. I see you, Kirk. I see you. So he says, marriage has been weaponized, giving has been weaponized, and sexuality has been weaponized. But Julia, I know you were particularly interested in saying a little bit more about what he said about marriage in particular.
Yeah. The gist of what he was saying is he's talking about the ways in which the church has used marriage as a tool of oppression. He does not mention the way that it affects men in this quote. He talks specifically about women. We know that it also affects men. But the final thing that he says, and I think that it is important, but he says that you can be single and used by God. And he goes on to say being married is not a prerequisite for God's hand on your life. He talks about how the church uses marriage to, like, if you aren't married, you can't serve. If you aren't married, you can't work with kids, all of these things that the church, these things that especially in Black churches and especially in more conservative churches are true. And I think I obviously, for many reasons, think about singleness and what it means. But I think the thing that I always miss from men is the why. Like
Wait,
that kind of.
before you get to the why, I want to spend a few. I want to give you space to land it on the why because I think that's really important. But I want to just say a little bit more about. I think I want to say a little bit more about what he brought up with respect to singleness, and what I loved that he said from the clip that I wrote down was he would talk about how people in church would say you're living in sin, you need to get married, but marriage doesn't fix sin. And I was like, and I remember hearing that kind of rhetoric and language growing up. And it didn't persuade me to get. I mean, I got married very young. I was 22. It wasn't unlike a lot of people. I know some people in my, I would say, group of friends, broadly speaking, got married young because they were afraid of like living in sin, quote unquote, with respect to sex and stuff like that, premarital sex. That wasn't me. I got married because I wanted to lock down my wife. I wanted to be like,
Smart man.
I was exactly because I was smart and it has paid off in many
Smart
ways.
man.
So I was like, I ain't gonna lie, I have outkicked my coverage. I know. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna lock this down. I'm like, that way she probably ain't gonna want to leave. So
It's harder to leave once you're married.
It's harder to leave. But I saw that. I was like, wow, I can't believe I did this. Let me just get married. Just get married. Because she would tell you I was way more interested to get married than she was, which is so funny. But anyway, I think that I remember when I was going into ministry, how people would say and talk about the fact that how present my wife needed to be so that people didn't think I was single, and all the ways in which singleness, even from the way I heard about it, was that it was this like you said, to an extent, like a stain or something that limited your capacity to serve, particularly if you were sexually active or anything like that. And what I appreciate, he also says, is he talks about how Paul writes, in the gospel
Yes.
about being single, and how, like, he says, I wish most of y'all should be
More
single.
of you. I would.
But, yeah, exactly. He's like, but you can't. He's like, but
Most
you
of y'all
can't
don't
be.
have no business being in marriages.
Exactly. I was like, and it's so funny because that stuff doesn't get discussed in church. And I do think, what it has done, it has created more divorces, more unhealthy marriages, which then produces children who grow up in, I mean, my mom's been divorced 3 times, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not a healthy environment to grow up in. I'll just say that, right? And so I thought he made just broadly speaking, a really good point on critiquing singleness on the theological grounds. Wesley, was there anything that stood out to you when you watched that clip?
I mean, I think the Paul comment about it being some of you could stand to be single was like yeah, like it's said because it's always. I mean, I think I've been part of like hiring processes at different churches where people have remarked on the singleness of the potential candidate, and so like it's this just like weird reality of like, no, I mean, if you want to be all about Paul, let's be all about Paul in all of the weird ways that he chooses to be, and let's talk about those contradictions. But I think it's so strange to see the ways that singleness has harmed people's abilities to be a part of a community. To hear Paul say that's actually some of you could stand to be single, and then sort of hear Kirk say that in the podcast. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. It sort of brought back those experiences.
A piece of the quote that he said I found Don't be no 30 to 35-year-old single Black woman and go to the family reunion. All the older women are going to do nothing, but they're going to look at you and they're going to wonder and question you and challenge you. Why are you not married? It's a prerequisite for identity and value that if you don't have a man or you don't have kids, that something about you is broken.
I had a question about that.
Yes.
Is he telling single women not to go to the family cookout because they will receive these sort of like looks? And
No, I don't think so. I think he's saying that that is what
that
happens.
is the perspective that
That's what happens when you go, that people wonder. But I think patriarchy harms everyone. Patriarchy and these ideas, the myth of masculinity and these boundaries of expectations that are completely, they're only socially constructed, right? They aren't actually scientifically real. They're not, there's no, the way that these systems are created to shepherd women, girls, young girls, into relationships that wind up being dangerous and don't make anyone happy. Because he mentions, he's like, people rush to get married, right? He's like, you don't want to be living in sin, so you rush into these marriages because you don't want to be single, and that's considered worse. Like he said, like, you're not married, you're broken, you don't have kids, what's wrong with you? But the other option's not great. Most of these marriages don't have no business. They're not sacred. Like, it's not sacred if it's not good. Y'all ain't got no business being 18 with a husband. A man who can't tie his own shoes or put sheets on the bed wants to be a husband?
Man, that sounds pretty terrible for anyone to be in that predicament. Wesley, were you gonna say? Were you gonna say anything?
No, fully on board. Yeah, it's
I think to an extent where I see patriarchy in this is how this often traps young, particularly poor, but young women in general, in communities, right? So like they can't. I don't know if escape is a strong enough, or it might be too strong of a word, but they end up stuck in these communities because they get married young and they have kids, and they don't, even if they don't go to college, they don't go away, right? They don't leave to go to a place where they actually can grow as individuals. They are made to stay in a particular kind of place and in a particular kind of lane of, married with children and supportive wife, and they don't get to explore who they might be able to become, or become the full person that maybe God has called them to be. And so I think that, and that, it's not to say that some people may choose that, but I think it's a choice, right? I feel like many of these girls don't even get a choice if they get pregnant or anything like that. Even if they don't.
Did you guys know that 50% of teenage pregnancies are teenage pregnancies by adult men?
I mean, that's probably not surprising, because right now, statistically, most people who are teenage pregnancies are like 17, 18, 19. And so, I mean, they're older girls. And so I do think a lot of this is, within respect to religion, is about patriarchy, is about upholding this particular kind of idea of who the male as the head of the household. Yes. And to sustain that model, you have to marginalize and suppress women. Julie, I think what's interesting to me, though, that I at least want to spend a minute talking about, is if we think about this from a positive masculinity perspective, how this does harm men, right? How patriarchy in this sense does harm men, because it's giving you this idea. Because again, I didn't even start college until I was in my mid-20s, and I could easily, Gabby and I, well, I mean, I don't think she would have went for that. She wouldn't want to have kids that young. But again, I have friends, like I have friends who had kids very young,
Right away.
and I just don't know that. I know I wouldn't have been able to live up to my own potential, because I didn't discover what that potential was until I was older. I needed some space. And so there's a narrow vision of even who men can and are supposed to be through this patriarchal framework, that harms people.
So much of it is performative, which is why it's so harmful. So much of it is like, you said you don't want to call it a trap, but I'm going to call it a trap. The older I get, the more I realize that the reason that so many people encourage women to have children young is because the longer you wait, And the more life you live, the more you understand what a sacred act having and raising a child is. Like the more time it takes for you to get to it, the more your ideas about it change.
Mm.
And it makes it a different consideration. Like if you had asked me when I was 18, like, yeah, of course I want to have kids. That's what I'm supposed to do. That's what you do. What else do people do, right? If you ask me now, I'd be like, a bunch of these people they ain't got no business having.
You are in the spirit of telling people what they do and do not have business to do today. That is what But no, the only caveat I wanna toss out before we move on, it's in the book from a public health perspective. In that book I've been reading and talking a lot about Weathering by Arlene Geronimus. She talks about how in these poor rural communities, both white and black, but particularly poor communities, how many of the women are encouraged to have kids early so that they can actually be alive to see their kids maybe graduate high school or whatnot, because the life expectancy there is
Yeah.
basically down in your like late 40s and 50s. And I know Wesley, I'm telling you, when I read this, I was
That
like,
is wild.
it's why, and it totally. I mean, but this is where like if you want to have kids at all, and you actually want to, and you don't want them to be, you don't want to burden anybody else with your children if you when you die, because you're gonna die young. I know this is a whole another like separate kind of podcast conversation about her work, because it really shocked me, because I'm not
Yeah.
I grew up poor, but not in like not this poor. Like not this poor.
Right.
So I was like, wow, this is a
That's
different level of poverty
yeah.
I had not considered. So maybe this should be in our when we have our episode on, or a couple episodes on poverty, and talk about Giannis and talk about the other
Mm,
nerdy political
mm.
politics stuff we talking about. So
Let's lean into techno feudalism. Let's learn about that.
Christian progressive perspectives on techno feudalism. That's probably just gonna be me and Wesley having that conversation. But
I don't
anyway,
want to come.
all right. To wrap things up today, I did want to spend a minute or two, spend a few minutes talking about the Olympics, because it just ended.
Oh my God,
USA.
yes.
I'm
The
patriotic.
only time
Who knew?
patriotism is good.
Yeah, I would say definitely I feel more patriotic during the Olympics than any other time.
Yeah.
Like I honestly, any other time, and during the years I'm
Who
alive.
doesn't?
It's hard not
So
to.
I know.
They
It's
put
weird
these little
because
clip
like
packages together and they tell you their stories and you're like, yes,
The
I am in
marketing.
tears and rooting for you. I just met you, but I
My
love you.
countrymen and women.
that guy that's on the pommel horse that has like the glasses that you guys
Yes.
don't.
Nerdy hot
Yeah,
guy.
I'm like his
He looks
story.
like Steve.
Yeah,
From American Dad.
he just looks like
Oh.
like a Steve. I don't even know. He
Yeah.
just looks like a Steve. I was like, yep, he looks like a Steve, like a regular dude that's like can do the only thing he's really good at the pommel horse, and he's just this nerdy guy. And his story
Yeah.
was so cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I fully agree. It's, I loved the opening ceremony. I really appreciated the way that they used Paris, but I missed one of the things that brings me so much joy about the Olympics, especially seeing all of the U.S. Olympians going there, is just how diverse the people that we send are. And for me, it's like, oh, this is America at its best in terms of like expanding the opportunity for people, allowing people from all swaths of lives to excel at the things that they want to excel in, and then to like win on a national or an international stage. It's even better. But I think I missed that aspect of this opening ceremony of just seeing the droves of black women, of black men, of brown men, brown women, just like filling. We send so many, and it speaks to the power of diversity, the power of allowing people to use their abilities and their fruits towards the betterment of, I mean, in this specific situation, it's the Olympics, but just that opportunity, I think for me is always something that I really appreciate about the Olympics. And it was on full display this year. I mean, all of the medals that we won, so many of we dominated in track and field, we're gymnastics, you just name them,
The
and
women.
we're just exceptional. So yeah, I think love the Olympics for that reason. Excited for it to be in LA in 2028.
I'm so excited for it to be in LA. But Julia, was
I'm
there?
not.
I guess. Oh well, I mean, you just worried about.
How
you
am
worried
I
about,
gonna
like,
get
the traffic.
around?
That's what I was saying. I knew she was gonna be. I was like, she gonna go into the traffic. She gonna go right to. But traffic
I
is.
couldn't even handle
I
the
actually.
Super Bowl. I can't. The
I-
PGA. Get it out of my town.
I actually read that they're gonna make it so that all these events are only gonna be accessible by public transportation. That's the plan for the Olympics. So I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but that's
They're
what they
building a
said.
subway out the door.
I'm so excited
We'll
for that
see.
subway.
I'm excited for them to open my street.
Get me to Westwood.
You know, we'll see.
Get me to the
I'll believe
Century
it when I
City
see
Mall.
it. I'll believe it when I see it.
So for me, the stuff I liked about the Olympics was just me, like I got into just all the sports, like everything that's strange and weird. Like I was watching ping pong and was mesmerized. I was like, these fools out here just going at it, man, just going, and it was wild. I was watching the thing that I watched that I know I would never watch otherwise was, I think her name is Lauren Scruggs, fencing. Like, so the
Oh.
American women's team won foil or whatever it's called. I don't even know what it's called. See, but they got this, they got this fencing swords. And like she was dominating. Like when she won, she was doing some of the most, like you could tell, like because obviously have a mask on, you can't tell that she's black, but you could tell by her mannerisms. She black. Like
Yes.
and so that was like pretty cool. But again, I said the guy on a pommel horse, the white dude who's like can do the Rubik's Cubes and just be so creative with that. Um, I was telling y'all like I was watching because I love the track and field are my favorite events because I just love watching people do something. I think the thing is like it's the thing where like you don't have to have the resources, right? Like you know what I'm saying? Like it's not like all these other sports where like you got your parents got this money. Like no, either you fast or you're not, right? And so like to me, running is like that's the most basic fundamental human thing, and to see folks be able to move that fast, to see Shikari like during the women's 4x100, and like she finished and like she just stares over at the camera like she did.
She's not. I can't even tell if she's trying her hardest sometimes.
I'm not sure she was.
Right?
It's just
like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, can someone give her a challenge? Because I really want to know how fast she can go.
Yeah. And the only country that I rooted for at one time that wasn't America was of course they had one of these stories about these different people competing, and they said that the Ireland had this group of women who were running the 4x400, and it was the first time they had ever qualified for that event. And they were like super excited because they don't really have a lot of track and field folks for reasons that we can talk about later. Or they don't have a lot of track and field folks that win anything. I'll say that. And so they were in second place the whole time to the Americans, and then they ended up getting fourth. And I was rooting for the Irish, man. I felt so bad for them. I was like, it was the only time I was rooting for some folks that wasn't us. But I know Wesley, you had some some interesting thoughts about the Olympics in terms of maybe some of the sports that should not be in the Olympics.
And controversial take, maybe not so much. All of the Olympics, every single event, but one, or at least the ones that I've been able to catch or I'm familiar with, they're all about like human excellence, human pushing themselves to the limit. But the equestrian stuff, that's the horses doing the work. And I'm just like, if you got enough money, you can have a horse and train it to do the things they need to do with enough time. I get that, but that's the horse doing the work. That's not the human doing the work. So for me, it's like, is this about human excellence or is this something else? It's probably just like tradition that equestrian sports exist. But that's why I really enjoyed watching the breakdancing, because even that, like, as like you don't think about breakdancing as like pinnacle human sort of like athleticism. But like it's impressive but it's still human centric. It requires like the physical body to do these things. So I was like, yeah, it may not have the prestige of a horse running a track, but it's people doing what they can do with their body, and to a great effect. I think the bronze winner for the breakdancing was from Florida, so I was rooting for Victor because they gave us a little package, and I was crying about his family, and I was just like, yes.
The thing is, they didn't even know what they knew that it could be like one of like 60 songs. They didn't know what they were gonna hear.
Yeah.
So it was straight up just dance, right? Just dance to it. So that was really cool. And then obviously the memification of the woman from Australia.
Oof.
Have been
so embarrassed.
I don't know how she's feeling. I mean, I don't know if she's even embarrassed. I think she's just kind of like, it is what it's just funny. I mean, I was like, every time I see people make fun of her or do something with it, I'm like, this is amazing. Why? Because it's not going to be the Olympics in LA, which I'm like, why not? Because this was awesome. Like, just for that moment alone, it should be in the Olympics.
Simone. Have we talked about Simone?
We haven't talked about Simone, so we definitely should say something about her.
I'm
Excellence.
not going. A superhero.
Yeah.
Like remarkable the
Yeah.
things that she can do with her body.
I
She's got like
mean,
5
And
moves named
she's
after her.
yeah, five moves. 5 moves named after her.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
and also just generally speaking, her vibe,
Yeah.
she does not care. She says what she thinks, and she doesn't care. I'm here for it. She's the best. She knows it. She doesn't apologize to anyone. Those people were hating her last round when she was like, I'm going to sit this one out. We had the now potential VP, JD Vance, talking about her.
Mm.
Well, why are we celebrating her failures, her weakest moment? And look at her now. What can he do? How high can he jump?
You could just stick with what can he do. I have no idea. Actually, you ain't got to go beyond that. What can he do?
Well, we have some ideas.
Well, I mean, other than make things worse.
It was
So, no, I thought Simone. I mean, that whole gymnastics team was amazing. Simone is just like another level of. She seems like another level of person, though, right? And I think this is what you're getting at, like in terms of she genuinely. And you never know what these people. I mean, we don't know them personally, but when she talks about her confidence and what she's had to overcome, being raised by her grandparents, and just her relationship with her husband, just all these other things, you see she's very comfortable in who she is, right? I think that's where you get. She's very, very comfortable in who she is, and the fact that she could like tweet or put on X or whatever after she wins. I can't remember what floor gold it was or what gold it was. It wasn't the floor because I know she didn't win gold in that. She tweets like, "Oh, I love my black job," like totally throwing shade at like Donald Trump, which I just thought was so funny. And his comment to the black
God.
journalists saying these immigrants are coming to take black jobs too, and just I was like, okay, this, woo, again another.
And even how she responded to that girl. What's her name? Michaela.
Michaela. Michaela.
It is
Nah,
spelled
yeah,
M-Y.
yeah, I'm making her
Kayla.
black. Her name's Michaela Maroney, I think is what her last name is, but it's Michaela definitely.
But just like to drag her, and all in good fun, like no shade, girl. Like you said it. You said what you said.
Yep.
She's allowed to reply, and then all of the tears, the like reactions to the reaction, as opposed to like the reaction to the actual
Yeah.
initiating action.
Yeah. Michaela
But-
Skinner.
Oh, Michaela Skinner. You got Michaela.
I might call her Michaela. You put M-Y capital K-A-Y-L-A. Like,
Oh wow,
Michaela.
man,
you tell me what it is.
That's
I haven't heard her
interesting.
speak, so I don't know.
I wouldn't.
They are telling you, and you keep saying, I disagree.
That is interesting. That is interesting.
Listen, I'm a fan of Simone. I've been blessed to hear her speak, and she's going on tour. She's taking her flips on the
I
road.
love that.
And what a wonderful representative for Black excellence, for American excellence, and for, I think, just the unbotheredness that you need to have to be a Black woman, full stop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the people who are most decorated, obviously, Wesley, I know you mentioned earlier that we sent more women than men in this Olympics, but the two most decorated Olympians, I suspect, were Simone Biles and probably Katie Ledecky, and swimming is one of those sports where it's like, I know I heard this from, I can't think of his name, another sports person. I feel bad I'm taking his take, but whatever, it's okay. He said like, swimming is interesting in terms of all their medals shouldn't count because you have because they have different strokes. So it's like you got the breaststroke, the fresh, all these other strokes. He's like, that'd be like saying, okay, we're gonna have the 100-meter going forwards, backwards, and sideways, and see who's the fastest. And I was like, well, it's kind of true. But anyway, regardless, is that you have these women who are dominant and to an extent do have to deal with the challenges of patriarchy. While Katie doesn't deal with the issues of racism, she still deals with the ways in which people, how she's treated as a very,
She's an athlete.
she's an athlete. I mean, it's same thing with the woman that plays rugby. I should look up her name real quick. I don't know if you guys heard about her. Like, she is jacked. She's a very she looks like I wouldn't want to tackle her. And we got the bronze this year, and she deals with a lot of flack because of not looking quote unquote feminine enough.
It was a huge thing these Olympics. A lot of people on the right, conservative people, were challenging the female athletes, because in the same way that they expect masculinity to perform in a specific way, they have the same expectations of femininity. And these athletes don't do that. That's not what they're there to do. I would argue that none of us have any obligation to perform anything other than whatever feels the most authentic to ourselves. But it was the poor boxer from Algeria, the way that they dragged her, and still no thought, even after learning that she's actually a cisgendered woman. No reflection, just no comment on the way that the things that they say might be damaging, or the admission that their assumptions of performative femininity are a bunch of bull. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like the ways in which, again, the Olympics talk about weaponization gets weaponized to talk about other things that end up dehumanizing people. You know, and I think that for me is one of the things that's just always so sad. And so the person that I'm thinking of is Ilona Maher, and she's a, you know, clearly a jacked. I mean, she plays rugby. You know,
Yeah.
like she looks
It's a
like she's very
contact
strong,
sport.
and she's beautiful. And the same thing with the boxer. You know, you have these women who are supposed to present in ways that make men feel comfortable, essentially. And so that's what we're getting at. And this is where I think is a good place to wrap up. I think the kind of conservative theology, conservative thinking undermines itself with respect to talking about being for like human beings, human rights, or being about love or families or any of those kinds of things. If you're purporting a narrative that really is about controlling people, you know, ultimately, and I did hear this, I can say I heard this on the Bomani Jones podcast. I thought he made such a good point. He talked about how Algeria is a Muslim country, super conservative. And he's like, do you think Algeria would send a trans woman to the Olympics? He's like, these people are trying to get us to be more conservative than Algeria. And I was just like, you know, I was like, we say it like that. This is why they weird. This is why they
100%.
weird. Nah. So, and
I think that it's illegal to be trans
yeah,
in Algeria.
but I mean, just like yeah. And with that perspective of you're trying to essentially have us be like Algeria, I think that says a lot in itself. So, well, thank you all for joining us for the Progressive Christians podcast for the first episode of this podcast. We're excited to have you all here. If you'd like to connect with us right now, we haven't created our new website yet. It's going to be up in a few weeks, but for now, you can find our information on the loftla.org website. We will be creating Instagram handles as well, so you can reach out to us on there. However, we do have our own separate feed, and so we would love for you, if you are currently getting this podcast through the Loft feed, to actually search for this podcast in its own feed, to subscribe to it from that feed, to rate and review it from that feed, so that we can get our ratings up and get our listenership up. Really excited to be able to grow this podcast and do some good work and really present a face of Christianity that we think can excite people and bring people, I believe, a version or perspective of Christianity that's actually hopeful, that's about love, and that really is about justice, and I would argue that actually can be healing. So again, thanks for listening, and we will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.